All right, everybody, we are back again for another episode of the Coach's Compass. Don't know what episode it is because we just continue to roll, continue to bring on cool guests from all over the world. It's your boy, Coach Coop, reporting live from the US of A. Now, remember, hit that like, subscribe, comment button down below so we continue to have this thing grow and continue to bring on cool guests. Coach Jay can't be with us today because he's got practice, right? He's still on that retirement tour, still trying to figure out what's going on next after the football is over. Doesn't matter. We keep it going. We got another dope guest with us. We got Coach Earl out of the PA area. Garage Strength. If you haven't heard about it, look it up. They're doing some dope work. They are a gym physical fitness center. They're the strongest gym in the U.S. 43 USA team athletes, 150 plus NCAA athletes, 7 games athletes, and 35 national champions. And that number might not even have been updated yet. They probably got even more than that going on right now. I'm pulling that just straight from the Instagram. But Coach Earl, welcome, and thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me, Coop. I really appreciate it. I feel like how do I say it? I want to shout out like the trainers in the gym too. Like I want to shout out Taman. I want to shout out like Legend. I want to shout out DJ, and I really want to shout out Dane too, who's like the head honcho there with it. And then like you could even there's Sam too, Sam Weeks, who does a lot with the throwers and Throw You, and then like Trevor too, and then there's even Yvonne. Like there's a lot of people there doing a lot of awesome things for a lot of like young kids and even professional athletes too, and then even adults just trying to like stay fit and make it happen too. So yeah, thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it too.
Of course, man. Like you already said, like you guys got Garage Strength, Throw You, all these coaches in there working with high level athletes, general population, NCAA athletes, like all of this. What is Garage Strength doing that is separating you guys from the rest?
So one of the things we do, and like is kind of a motto, is like easy access to freak training. Is like one of the things we want to do. We live in, I guess you could technically, like we're around Reading, Pennsylvania, which is typically seen as like an impoverished area too. And we get people in there, and the idea is we take someone who is probably ordinary and make them believe they can be, and we set a standard and we hold them to that standard and work towards like achieving more and more. So one of the things we do within the system is we use like benchmark testing, and the testing is around certain exercises, lifts, drills. And then those exercises are tied to specific sort of, I guess, like categories, like a realm of athleticism. So think explosiveness as like its own realm. Think of strength as its like own thing, and then speed and endurance, right? Like those 4 sort of categories of things. And then based off the sport the athlete's doing is like, we want to develop the athlete to like have those different things. And through the testing, you can see where they're weak. So for instance, if we're testing like strength, so they're doing something like a bench press or a back squat, right? Like depending on lower body or upper body. Athlete, no matter the age, middle school, high school, college age, post-collegiate, professional, there's like goal numbers, if you will. So like we have the numbers that like, hey, you're a middle school and you're a scrub. Like that number is like kind of what the kid on the bench is hitting. We have a number for a middle school athlete who's like, all right, you might be starting. We have the number for the middle school kid who is starting, and we have the number for the kid who's probably could start on the high school team, but is only in 8th grade. They're like that elite freak. And we have these numbers then for every single level of athlete, like beginner, advanced, intermediate, high school. And all the numbers are based around essentially who has come through the gym. Like, so our D1 athletes, Power 5 athletes, like what numbers were they hitting in these movements and these lifts and these things? So like, that's our elite, that's our freak number. All right. Our kids who ended up going D2 or made a D1 program that wasn't Power 5 ended up, maybe starting or getting playing time their senior year, special teams or something like that. That's like, good elite numbers. And we know what those are based off where they're at. So that's one thing. We essentially we have an algorithm to sort of predict where you could be. Now, those numbers don't predict what's in someone's head or sort of their mindset or their like go get itness, but it gives them a goal and a place to be. So like I was saying strength, right? Bench press or back squat. Like, here's a number you have to hit to go there. We have the same thing then around like explosiveness. So we're testing like a vertical jump. We're testing broad jump. It's actually a depth jump to a broad jump. And we're even testing like power cleans, Olympic lifts type of stuff that kind of borders between the two, if you will. Like, if you power clean so much, it's probably a demonstration of your strength, but it's also a demonstration of your explosiveness. And then same thing with like speed. Like, and we think of speed in three ways. We think of top end speed, we think of acceleration, and we think of change of direction when it comes to speed. So like change of direction is more your agility. So if we're testing like change of direction, think of like a 5-10-5 shuttle run or an L cone drill as something to like get that benchmark. For like top end speed, it's probably like a 100-meter dash or 40-yard dash with football. And then for something like acceleration, it's like just your 10-yard start, things like that, or even the broad jump and vertical jump, like appeal to that too. So that's some of the stuff we do. I could even get more into the like system of what they do on a day-to-day basis as well. And then the periodization system, larger from like what they do in season and out of season to whenever we want to get to that.
Yeah, for sure. But like, so if you take those numbers, right, and you bring in an athlete, how, like, so have you ever had an athlete that comes in and like they're maybe at a D2, D3 at a smaller school and they hit those freak numbers? So you're kind of like, why are you at that level? Or have you ever had, a guy that's at the D1 level and tests like way below those elite numbers, and it kind of like, has that ever thrown off, the numbers or anything? Or how has that changed the training program?
So that's a great question. Yes, people don't live in all the areas and all the spots. So we use it, it's like a radar graph. So if you've ever seen, like, I don't know, if you ever played like D&D or something like that, or any type of role-playing game on like a thing, and you'll like see, or maybe even Madden has it. I haven't played, I know the new ones come out, but I haven't like played it. And like, you get like a stat sheet, right? Like you're ranked, like you're a 98 and something like this. So maybe you have an athlete who's like a 99 in speed, but they're like a 72 in strength. All right, like the speed is what gets them to that level, even though their strength level isn't there. But what that does is it creates an opportunity then within the system of where you could get like your low-hanging fruit to improve the athlete more. So, and then a lot of times when you see like a D2 kid that isn't necessarily D1, it's probably a few things. Late developer, not necessarily access. There's a chance they're from a smaller school. So when you play at a smaller school, sort of the way you end up having to train and develop as an athlete is not the same way you need to train and develop at a bigger school for what a D1 school is looking for, right? So if you're playing, like your high school graduates 100 kids, on your football team, you're probably playing both ways and you're playing all special teams. Like there's no way around it. So in that sense, like your endurance capabilities are different than the kid who's only playing offense at like the 6A school. So the way they train is a little bit different, right? To have success in the program, you have to do things a little bit different. And so what you'll see is like that kid who has maybe more of that endurance all of a sudden gets into a program where they're only playing one way and can start like to develop their skills a little bit more that are more like specific for at the elite level. Because if you look at the NFL, right, like a running back, 20 touches a game, maybe 30 at most. Like imagine you have to have 30 max efforts over a 60-minute span. It's totally different than like as you're training in a high school level where it's like, I need you to go for 60 minutes as close to max effort as possible. So like that's where you'll sort of see that, how do I say it, the test like wave in and out and come back through that way.
Yeah, I mean, how does that correlate? So like, you know what I mean? How and you talked about it a little bit earlier, but the periodization of, in season, off season, but you guys got multiple different athletes, right? So you got guys from guys and girls, you got football, basketball, you got Olympic athletes. So how is that having so many in-house and being able to, going off this testing model and then figuring out where people go and whatnot?
All right. So we have what we call is our sports depth system. And the sport depth system categorizes sports. So we have 5 of those. So the first one is strength and power. So think like power lifters, weight lifters, shot putters, discus, like throwers. So if you would like those 4 categories, right? Strength, speed, explosiveness, and endurance, they don't need endurance in the same way like a marathon runner needs endurance, right? They still need it, but it's a different representation of that skill set. So that's sports depth 1. And then sports depth 2 is it's our speed and power. So this is more now when you're getting into like football players, like running backs, linebackers, gymnasts, even people. You could even say like a 50-meter like swimmer would be in this. Quick explosive bursts that are more interval based. So now all of a sudden, instead of needing like strength and explosiveness, now they need speed and explosiveness, and strength helps. All right. And then our sports depth 3 is what we refer to as like our keystone, or what would be like combat sports. So you got like 6 to 8 minutes, maybe 15 if you're like MMA, at the elite, and it's an all out brawl. So like you need endurance, but you need like that anaerobic endurance type of capacity. You need to be explosive. You need to speed, not so much, because everything's like in those tight corners. You need like speed in a certain sense, like how quick's your throw, how quick's your shot. Like Jordan Burroughs on a blast double is incredibly fast, but it's not necessarily like he's running 100 meters and like, look how fast that guy is. So like all of a sudden then sports depth 4 is what we call continuous go. So these are like open skilled sports where like you don't stop moving. So like soccer, right? You don't stop moving. You end up running somewhere between like a 10K or plus during the course of the game, or like lacrosse, field hockey. Basketball to a point, especially at lower levels, when you get more to the elite level, I'm of the opinion basketball becomes more like a sports step 2 because of the timeouts and the way they sub and like do the rotations, that it's only like 3-minute burst of energy what they go, even though it's over a 48-minute. And then there's sport depth 5, which is essentially it's great distances. So think like your marathon runners, your triathletes and stuff like that. So using that as a categorization system helps you understand where to bias. So for each sports step, the tests are different, if you will. Like, so for instance, with sports depth 1, like I'm more concerned about their strength and explosiveness. I'm not testing endurance for those guys. With sports depth 2, I'm concerned about explosiveness, speed, and strength. Like endurance is in there, but it's not necessarily something I need to test as much. Where then when I get to sports depth 3 with the combat sports and I'm worried about endurance, all of a sudden, like I'm testing endurance, like through a 5K, through like a 1K bike intervals with a rest period to see how well they recover. And then when I get to like sports depth 4, all right, now I'm worried probably less about strength, but more about speed, explosiveness, and endurance and where I'm testing. So do you see how that like you sort of shift the things, even though the tests are like the same, the test for each category like goes and the sport depth goes from there. So that would be how we do it with the different sports. You asked about periodization too. I can get into that as well.
Go for it, man, because I'm loving it, because I'm learning like how you guys are piecing all this together and everything. So yeah, for sure, the periodization.
Yeah, and I just want to say like none of this is, the sports step stuff is newer, but none of this is hidden. Like we have it in our courses we sell, like the books Dane and me co-authored together, like the parabolic periodization, the garage strengths program design, and the sports performance Bible. Like this stuff's in there. So, and there's courses on it too, like on the website if anyone's interested in that. So from periodization standpoint, we have phases, right? So typically it's made up of 5 phases. There's and they sort of oscillate like a parabola. That's why the parabolic periodization, between volume and intensity as like the core focus. So it starts with, exposure phase. So think of the exposure phase as like you're coming off season, your body's getting exposed to the sports and training and the conditioning again, like what it takes to come in and lift 4 to 5 days a week. Workout 4 to 5 days a week in a capacity around like not doing your sport, but lifting weights. Mm-hmm. Exposure phase is usually about 4 weeks long, maybe a little longer, depending on what time frame you have off season, right? And usually you start with a test to see like where they're at to establish a baseline. Exposure phase and the comprehension phase follows the exposure phase. Once again, volume focused. Volume's actually up, but your body's better conditioned now to continue like along those lines with the volume. From there, then it flips to a more intensity focus, and we start the ascension phase, another 4 weeks, give or take. From the ascension phase, we go into the summit phase. This is about when you're probably the most explosive, strongest, and you're about to like essentially hit your peak, right? From there, then it goes into the realization phase, which could be anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. And it tends to line up with the competition or be like competition out of competition type of thing from a periodization standpoint. So that's roughly 18 to 20 weeks there of programming, which would get you from like January to what? May? January, February, March. Yeah, about. And by that time, like, depending on what sport you're in, like, and then you do that based off seasons, right? So spring sports, winter sports, fall sports, their off-season lines up differently. But that's the periodization model in the thing. So that would be more off-season. In season, we use what's called a rolling compensation model. So the idea is the athlete works out 2 to 3 days a week. And how many days a week they work out is highly dependent on the competition level. So like, football's easy because like it's very specific. Like in high school, they're playing on a Friday night, right? Like NFL, they're playing on a Sunday, maybe a Saturday. So it's much easier to like do it. Sport like basketball and wrestling, where you have more competitions, or lacrosse, like more games in a week, it can get a little bit more difficult, like strength of schedule. But with football, it's like, all right, we're playing this team that we can steamroll this week. We're trying to get 3 sessions in. If we're coming up against a team that isn't like is going to give us a punch in the face when we hit, like, all right, we're only going in 2 days a week. And then our volume and our intensity is measured that same way as well. We go lower body power day, upper body power day are the 2 days. We like to get that lower body power day in as soon as possible after like the competition to sort of work out the cobwebs. The third day, if it happens, is what we call an athlete day. So our athlete day mainly consists of plyometric movements. It's usually, you can do what we call a technical coordination movement at the beginning. So like a snatch, a power clean, a full clean, a jerk, something where you move heavyweight fast. You don't necessarily have to do that, but you can. It usually starts out with an easy bilateral plyometric and an easy unilateral plyometric, and you like superset those. So like box jumps into like single leg pogo jumps or something like that. And then you will typically from there go into a more challenging movement. So like we'll do hurdle hops now, and then maybe we'll do single leg stair jumps, something a little bit more difficult. And then from there you could go into a jump series in season, not necessarily what you would do because jump series get more complicated. So it's like, for example, you could do a jump series where you're like, think mini hurdle, high hurdle, mini hurdle, high hurdle, mini hurdle. And it like looks like a set of steps. And over the mini hurdles, you're jumping single leg laterally. And then over the high hurdles, you're jumping 2 legs like straight forward. And if you want to make it real complicated, you land on 1 foot over the high hurdle. And then you go lateral again. So you sort of get the idea, like you're learning how to jump cut, basically. Like you're strengthening the leg to make a lateral movement. We have video, if you've ever seen in like our YouTube channel where like Dane's talking and he's working with Nick Singleton. Like Nick does it and makes it look so easy. And then like you go and try and do it and you're like, man, there's a reason he's that good.
Exactly.
So yeah, that would be the in season. I guess I should give that same thing for the off season too, like the day-to-day split and break down there too.
Go for it, man.
All right. So we do what's called like a Lulu split. So lower, upper. But in between that, we have an athlete day. So the athlete day is the plyometric day, which I just described. But like off season, like you can push that a little bit more. You'd probably add like a reflexive strength movement, which is like something developed around like the ideas that Franz Bosch writes about, sort of around like teaching just be reflexive as an athlete with it. So it tends to be like lighter weight that's moved incredibly fast for low reps. So one of our favorites is like a drop dumbbell. You catch the dumbbell in like a single leg RDL, and then you go ahead and you snatch the dumbbell and you hold the hip lock. So it's like, it's like a high knee and you pause there in that position and the dumbbell's overhead like that. But back to that's the reflexive strength. Back to the like Lulu stuff. So lower body power day first. We start with the legs. A day is typically technical coordination movement. So with the lower body, that would be a snatch, a clean. It could be some variation of that. Like if you're a basketball player, you're probably doing something from 2 blocks just because it's like higher up, and that's more the position you're in as the athlete, right? You're in that like quarter squat, and that's where you're working from. From the technical coordination movement, we would go into an absolute strength movement. So lower body, front squat, zombie squats, back squats, single leg squats. And we love single leg squats, especially with like our single leg roller and the foam, like the balance pad. Like it's just, I don't know. Have you ever done like a Bulgarian split squat or anything like that? You ever feel how uncomfortable the back foot is on like a bench or so
Very.
It's the worst. Like, so GS, like they invented that. I don't know, but like designed it specific around like, this is the height it should be at. This is the most comfortable for athletes. And like, it's a bedrock of our system. And when you go from like doing a Bulgarian split squat on a bench to using a single leg roller, like the world is like just opens up to you. Your foot's more comfortable.
So much different. Yeah.
Yeah. You can balance, you can, how do I say it? Like you can do it with speed. Like you're not as worried about falling, and you can load the weight up. Like I just want to say, like, I've used it. I think I can do respectable numbers with it. But when you watch someone like single leg squat 500 pounds, you're like, whoa.
Yeah. That's in the super freak.
Yeah. Well, what's crazy is like, you'll see like, at the gym, like I've seen like NFL quality athletes like do 400 pounds for reps. And it's just like insane. And some people, like, what just boggles my mind is their single leg squat is like basically up at their back squat just because they express their strength better that way. And it's just like mind blowing when you see it. All right. So technical coordination movement, lower body day, absolute strength movement, and then we get into accessory movements. The accessory movements are more like hypertrophy-based, sort of bodybuilding. So you would think around that, like sarcoplasmic pump type of thing, fill out a frame around like a musculature the athlete needs for the sport. So like if you're a swimmer, you need bigger lats, right? So like it's a leg day, so what am I saying? Let me think of something more specific on the leg day. You're like, I don't know, you're a football player, you need bigger quads type of thing. Like you need bigger glutes. Like that's where the exercise will focus. Or you're a sport like basketball and there tends to be more injuries around the ankles. So we're going to do structural bodybuilding around that joint to keep it healthy. So like tibialis curls, calf raises, maybe even like jumping rope type of stuff. Things to keep the joints healthy is like the point around it. So that's a lower body power day. Upper body power day is like the same exact structure. Technical coordination movement, absolute strength movement, accessory movements, hypertrophy, like structural bodybuilding. Big difference is like it's upper body. So technical coordination movements are things like split jerks, power jerks, push presses, still in that like Olympic weightlifting type of thing, like more muscles coordinating together to move the heaviest weight as fast as possible. And then absolute strength movements, bench press, incline bench press. And this is one place where I think we differ in a lot of respects, is we push pull-ups like it's the bench press. So if you think of the bench press like it's the front squat, we use the pull-ups like it's the back squat. So we'll like weight them up, we'll load them up, and it's like, yo, hit a two. How much weight can you have hanging from your waist, and how heavy can you go? And like you'd be surprised with how much that helps in other aspects. And then like your ability then, like if you can do a pull, like a 5 rep with 90 pounds hanging between your waist, all of a sudden doing a body weight for 20 feels a lot more accessible.
Man, y'all got it down. You know what I mean? Like it sounded like amazing. On top of like talking about all this periodization and like talking about the 5 categories and all the different things you guys do. How long did it take you guys to come up with this? Right? Like and put this all together and kind of get it flowing.
That's awesome question. So Garage Strength has existed since 2008. So this is a system that has been experimented with, evaluated, like reflected on through iterations for since then. So like it hasn't been like an overnight thing, right? Like it's almost 2024 right now since 2008. What, that's 16 years of like doing the work, going to conferences, learning from people, right? Like Dane learned from Bunderchuck, he learned from Poliquin. You can see like all the books he has, and then just own personal doing the stuff. I came in as a remote athlete into the Garage Strength system, learning how to weightlift for CrossFit was like my thing. I was like, I just wanted to be stronger. As a master's athlete, Dane was able to like program for me to get to like, I ended up setting like the American record at the time in my weight class for a master's 36 to 40 in the snatch through that. And like, I hadn't done that before. It's just like, saw that. So through that, then I was like, Dane, can I like learn how you come up with this, what you do? The best way to describe it was like master and pupil. I'd go sit like multiple times. Like I'd go down the gym, I'd sit while he coached the weightlifters, and he'd let me just ask him questions. I learned, I took notes. I'd write the notes up and I'd send my like notes to him. Like I'd send the documents to him. And he just goes to me, he's like, can we turn this into a book? I was like, all right. That's like how we wrote Parabolic Periodization. Like essentially our discussions, writings he had, things I learned from him, how we shaped it into that. And that was sort of like where I want to say like I got the like, hey, you can come, like the faith from like Dane, like to learn and like be part of the system and help develop it and like train around it and like help to educate people on it. My first career was in education. Like that's what I did. Like I taught people. So like trying to like sort of systemize the system, if you will, so other people could understand it and do it. So I come in, then that book comes out and it was like, all right. So from there, then it's a back and forth in question. Like if you go through, I forget how long we've been doing the podcast, like the Garage Strength podcast together. At first it was like Masters of Sport. Yeah. And so the goal of that, like the idea was like, hey, let's mimic what we did then for just like your learning purposes, for like, let's record it and put it out for other people's learning purposes too. And like through those conversations and then just through iterations, like the system just keeps developing. So like you get into like the Sports Performance Bible and the program design where you start doing less like weightlifter specific stuff and more like any sport you could apply this to. I guess that would have been like the last 5 years. It's really been categorized more in a sense that like this is how we get it to other people instead of just people on site to understand it. And then through that, like the system developing is like, that's where Peak Strength then comes in too, right? That's the app Garage Strength has developed to like basically like easy access to free training. Like here you go, everyone. Like if you want to do the training that's done at Garage Strength by like elite athletes, by Olympic athletes like Sam Mattis, Eric Favors and stuff like that, like, yo, Peak Strength's your ticket. Like it will do that for you. And it hasn't happened yet, but it's coming. And I got permission to talk about it. Like we have an update coming around too within the app that's basically bringing all this new stuff in, like the sports step stuff I was talking about, like the categorization by sports, and then how it like helps with speed, endurance, and not just like strength and explosiveness. Like it starts having those sessions in there as well too. Some more drills around being speed. That's coming. Not giving a date, but it's on like you can see it in the horizon and it's approaching soon. So yeah, to answer your question, it's been a 16-year process that like just happens on a day-to-day basis, month to month. And it's like Dane comes with the ideas. He does it in practice. He sees what works with like the elite athletes. It feeds down to the trainers. And then like it's an education process from there. Then how do we give this education to the rest of the world then too? So that's like where the YouTube channel comes in. That's where the social media stuff comes in. Because really, we just want everyone to be as strong as possible. And the more people we can help get as strong as possible, as fast as possible, achieve whatever their athletic dream is, stay healthy, you know, whatever that is. We want to just keep making it more accessible to more people.
That's what I feel like. That's what the coaching game is about, right? That's why everybody gets started in this and goes with what they're going with. It's working with athletes, working with general populations, because you want to make everybody better, right? So I've never understood why coaches have never worked together or made things more accessible or shared the knowledge and spoke to one another to learn. But obviously that's a whole nother field to go down. But you talk about all your systems and whatnot, and like the 16-year process. Who are you continuing, not only just from Dane, but like who are you continuing to learn from and kind of fine tune your own knowledge and your systems outside of just garage strength? Like who are some of the top coaches that you're kind of looking at?
So number one, like I learned from Dane. I learned a lot from Taman, who's like our head coach, deals with the majority of like our middle school and high school kids there. I don't want to say recent because it's been like a year or two, but he had an athlete make the Puerto Rican national basketball team. Like he's had a few state basketball too. He has some studs he's been developing, and like, so I will talk to him often on site about things. And Taman is like world-class thrower too. Like he's a shot putter. He took 9th at US, the Olympic trials recently. And Taman I think he threw 65 feet somewhere there. I don't know the numbers too precisely. He's someone big I learned. He challenges Dane a lot just from different experiences where they come. But like he's still a part of the thing. When it comes to speed stuff, I learned a ton from Legend because he's our speed guy on staff. I like to talk to him with that. He's extremely knowledgeable around the equipment we use, how we use it, with the timing. As far as reading, I've been reading this. I actually have it right here, right now. This Jens Bangs, I'm going to butcher the name, Bangsbo book. It's more around soccer training. I like to learn. I love Franz Bosch is someone I like to read a lot. And then PubMed, I end up through sort of, how do I say it? Through osmosis. We have like a channel of essentially like research articles, like scientific, like journal articles that end up popping up in like our like Slack thread amongst like the trainers, amongst like the staff. And typically Dane finds them and I just go in and read them. And I'm just like, you learn something. And it's like, oh, let me see how I could do this, or like creates a conversation or a dialogue around things. We have a Discord and a Reddit. So there's people that are more anonymous that I can interact with that will ask questions. I don't necessarily know like their level of knowledge or where they're at, but like their thought processes through things. And sometimes I think they know who I am. So they like kind of defer to like the expertise or the hierarchy of it, if you will. But I would like to say like I genuinely ask questions because I want to learn from them, because I have this like internal perspective to be a learn-it-all, not a know-it-all. That like everyone knows something that I probably don't know, or has an insight that value my perspective on something, where maybe it could be as simple as like understanding how to give a cue more, how a certain athlete is like thinking about something, to empathize with what they're going through, to like be better at coaching or delivering messages, like outside of sort of the like the X's and O's of it, if you will, more the interpersonal stuff that goes on. And then I love reading Franz Bosch. Even the first time I ran Franz Bosch, I felt it was completely over my head for a bit. And then eventually, like, I just learned. And by the time I was reading, like, my second and third Franz Bosch book, I'm like, I got this. Even though I still probably don't got it, like, I could still learn. So, yeah, that stuff, like, I'm into. And then, like, you're just scrolling through Instagram or, like, social media and stuff like that. And you see someone do something cool, and you're like, oh, that's neat. I like Drock's videos. I like Rattel's videos. Like, I don't agree with them necessarily on everything, but like I said, I think they have, awesome stuff to learn and glean from, and like finding how it works within. I'm also a big fan of, I don't want to say like I'm totally into it, but I like how Seidman pushes things towards like an extreme level. It's almost like an iconoclast type of like behavior with it, and like he definitely has success with it, and I think that's really cool. And it's like a disruption that I think is valuable to force people to have to think about things through stuff. I don't like just the hate on it type of thing. I think that's like worthless. I think like I said, there's value in anything and everything in some capacity. It's just, it may not be the like total quality of something. Like I still think a back squat and like pull-ups are going to get you incredibly far, but it's okay to like go and do a reflexive strength movement. It's okay to do this like asymmetrical loading type of press with like a dumbbell to try to build more core stability as part of your accessory movement. So yeah, I think that's about who I've been learning. I've actually have diverse interest, if you will. So I like to try to take from totally out there places as well too. Like I like to read and like glean ideas from something weird, or like playing a video game and be like, if you were to do this physically, how would you train for it? I like reading manga. Like I like doing my geek culture stuff and things like that. So
There's nothing wrong with that, right? Everybody's a
yeah,
little bit different in the game, right?
yeah.
Get to know a little bit of something about all the coaches. Now, if you look back at 16-year-old Earl, right, and now the age that you're at, right, and you were to look back and to give him one piece of advice, what would it be?
What would it be, man? Probably don't be so headstrong, like, or keep your mouth shut. One of those two.
It's a hard thing to do at 16, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. From like a training standpoint, I think I wish I would have found certain things like resources sooner. So when I was in high school, Nebraska football came out with this like training book that I had. I didn't get it till like my senior year, like a high school, but I wish I would have had that sooner, because that was my first introduction to like cleans, snatches, and things like that. I wish I wouldn't have power lifted so much. I wish I would have did more like explosive type of lifts, more full range of motion, squats, less leg pressing, just stuff I learned basically later on from like investigating, because I like kind of fell off of like fitness from like 20 to 30. I was more into my like instruments and like playing my banjo and stuff like that. Like I still do stuff like that, but like fitness around my 30s became much more like imperative to like who I am and identity again. Simply because I was like, what made you happy when you were a kid? And one of the things I always enjoyed doing was working out. Like I was the guy who enjoyed practice probably more than the game, because I just liked doing. And this probably isn't good from a competitive stance. I like doing more than I like showing how good I was at something. And like competition is more like proof of concept, where I just wanted to do it and I don't want to say have fun. Like I was competitive. Like I was a decent athlete. It's just, it wasn't like me beating you didn't make me more who I was, like, if you will. I like at a very young age, I understood like you are who you are no matter what they do. So like, I don't know. I always had fun. Like this is the best way to describe it. I'd rather go play a pickup game than go watch an NBA game. Like I'd rather be a participant than a fan. Like even though the quality of the game's going to go way downhill, I'd rather do that.
I love it. I love it. And now this is going to be a new part that we're just adding in. For our next coach that we interview, what is one question you would love to hear us ask them?
Okay. I would like to know what they value most in their training system in developing in an athlete. Like, is it speed? Is it strength? Is it explosiveness? Is it like their cardiorespiratory, their endurance capabilities? I feel like that would be where I'd want to go. Like, I guess too, it can be sports dependent, but like, and then why they value that more. Like, where do they see end range value in that? So like, for instance, if I'm a coach and I value explosiveness more than strength, there's a good chance I bias my programming more towards plyometric movements than I do towards back squats and bench pressing. All right. Why is it I make that decision to do it? Like, is it because I feel my athletes don't get beat up as much? I feel my athletes respond to it more. I feel like it leaves them be more competitive on the field. Like they have more in the tank. Like, I don't know. I'm just, hypothetical. Why is it would I think that? Stuff like that.
I love it. We're definitely going to add that for the next coach that comes. But before we get out of here, we got our 60-second round. It is 10
Okay.
questions, 1-word answers. Are you ready for it?
I will do my darndest to say one word.
All right, here we go. 60 seconds on the clock. Favorite post-workout snack?
Quest bar. Well, yeah. The cookie
Favorite
specifically.
sport?
Right now, basketball.
Dream vacation spot?
I want to go live in Tokyo for like years.
Guilty pleasure food?
Goldfish.
Best concert you've ever been to?
Man, you're killing me.
Oh, favorite movie genre?
Horror.
Best gym you've ever been to?
Garage strength.
Dream car?
Ooh, I think I'd probably. Oh, I want like some type of Lamborghini. I think like something they race out on that big one. Mike, yeah, I want a Lamborghini or Formula One car. Something like just over the top.
What is your number one flaw as a coach?
I expect too much. Like
Would you rather be in an octagon with a gorilla, tiger, or a bear?
Tiger.
And that is it. Coach Earl, thank you so much for being here with us today. And thank you so much for sharing all the knowledge and what you guys are doing over there at Garage Strength to make you guys the number one strongest gym in the USA. So thank you for your time. And we can't wait for all the listeners to hear this one.
Yeah. Thanks, Coop. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for letting me spread the word about Peak Strength, Garage Strength, our sports steps, and all that stuff. I appreciate that a lot.
For sure. And we're out.